Hey everyone, this is April or Iya Alake, and today I want to talk about this thing that so many of you are now doing unexpectedly, this thing called working from home. I know that some of you are freaking out. This is not comfortable. This is not what work means for you. Work means going to a building other than your home. So now we are forced, many of us, to work from home, and I just want to say I got you. And I say that because I've been working from home since 1998. I started my PR agency in 93. 5 years later, I left my corporate nonprofit job at a family health center. And when I left, I didn't go rush to get an office space. It wasn't even a thought. I knew I was going to work from home. So 22 years later, I've been doing that successfully and without apology, without any embarrassment. Remember, there was a time when people kind of thought that you weren't on your job or you weren't professional or successful enough if you couldn't afford an office space. That was never me. So let me just share a couple of things that I've learned through trial and error that I think will be helpful. Just four basic things. But first, I do want to shout out, in all seriousness, the public health officials, the medical doctors and nurses, the mental health officials, and who I like to call our spiritual health officials as well. This collective of healers and health advocates are working tirelessly to keep us alive in this unfortunate upheaval, this pandemic, this age of COVID-19, of coronavirus that we find ourselves in. And I just want to pause to say thank you, to say that you are appreciated to this collective of healers and health advocates. We appreciate you. And I definitely want to shout out my spiritual health official, if you will, Chief Ayanda Clarke, my teacher and my spiritual guide. So on that note, let's pull out these four basic things. Number one, when you get up, get dressed. Don't do the bunny slippers. Don't do the half naked at the computer because you know no one's watching. It makes a difference if you maintain that professional routine of getting up and going to getting dressed, because that's what you did before, and it smooths over the transition, and it helps to keep you on point with your mindset in terms of how you approach your work. If you know that you are still being 100% professional, and you can't really think that if when every time you glance at the floor you have on bunny slippers or you're in your robe. So just get up, go to work, even if it's your dining room table, and be fully dressed. That's number one. Number two, dead the background noise. Now that's the thing that's super important. The last thing you want to discover is that your oven door makes noise when you open it because you didn't notice it before, but then you discover it because you're in the kitchen on a conference call. You open the oven door and it makes noise, or you're washing the dishes, or you're making coffee, and the things that doesn't register as background noise, all of a sudden they're super loud to everybody else on the phone. So don't even put yourself in that position. Don't invite your household noises to the conversation. So be mindful of that, and don't do that. Now it's a little bit difficult if you have children, I'm sure, because you're sharing your home, but to the best of your ability, dead all of the background noise. The other thing is, number three, is to identify, isolate, and structure your workspace. So that means that half of the dining room table, if that's now your office, make it your office. Make it clear if you're living with someone that that's your workspace. They should not touch it. Don't interfere. It's important to identify what that is and be settled in that space in your home. I would not recommend working and using your bed as your desk, or wandering around the house on the phone, or whatever, or sitting on the edge of the bathtub. Identify a space designated and structure that environment, that little nook or whatever it is, as your office, and keep it as such. I think that's very important. Number four is like a twofer. Number four is set your hours and go to bed. Those two separate things, but it's combined into one. I will explain. Number one, 4A is when you set your hours, when you have the luxury to do so. I do understand that some of you have your hours dictated to you even though you're working from home. But if you have the space to set your hours, stick to what those hours are. Honor them yourself, but make sure that you're clear on what those hours are to your colleagues and your coworkers or your clients. The thing that happens when we work from home, there's this unspoken assumption that you have a lot of time. You have a little bit extra time because you're not commuting, you're in a laxed environment, and you can always be on. And that is a problem. If you set your hours, be it 9 to 5, maybe that was what it was before, be it 9 to 5, be it 10 to 6, be it 12 to 8, whatever those hours are, be clear, and everyone should be on the same accord. It should also include when your breaks are, your lunch break, your power breaks, or whatever, but that's going to be very important so there is no abuse of time. And sometimes we abuse our own time. We overgive, we're over available, and I just want to recommend don't do that. Set your hours, set your boundaries, set what your parameters are, make sure that the expectations are clear and everybody knows what to expect and when not to expect. Very important. Now, the thing about going to bed is a little bit nuanced. I had come to discover that I was working around the clock all the time. I am a recovering workaholic, though some people would disagree. I'm much better now than what I was over the past nearly 30 years. But the balance is always in place, and I'm at my best when I make a ritual out of going to bed versus falling asleep. And there's a distinction. When I go to bed, like I said, I call it a ritual. You might identify it or create a routine. Maybe you don't call it a ritual. Maybe it's your routine, your habit, your pattern, your discipline. But when I make it a point to get the day off me, to close out the business, to turn off my intellectual mind, my strategy, my thinking of other people, and always wanting to, to be excellent for other people. When I can turn that off, because that's my business, is what I do, and I can settle into having that personal time, be it with family or what my hobbies are or whatever, it makes a difference. But if I don't go to bed and shut the day down and get the day off me, as I like to say, then I end up falling asleep. And that means that I'm falling asleep, laying on the bed. I lay down for what I think is a 20-minute power nap. I wake up 6 hours later and my cell phone is on my face, or I sit down for a minute and it turns into the next morning and the computer is still running and it's in my lap and I'm just still on. And so that thing about going to bed versus falling asleep is really important because it's all about distinction. It's all about the things that you put into place, what you tell your body, and what you effectively do to separate business and personal. And I found that it works when you make that distinction. So these are my 4 best practices. I would love to know what you think, what works for you. Please like and subscribe. Please comment. I definitely want to see what works. I'll share more, but wanted to share these 4. Thank you so much.